Hey everybody, and welcome back to our YouTube channel here at 360 Player, the all-in-one sports platform for modern teams and clubs. In this video, we're going to talk about some different ways that you can modify small-sided games, which for many players is their favorite part of any training session. Basically, a small-sided game is a smaller version of a real game where actually you're having players compete against each other in more of a game-like setting. And there's so many different versions and modifications that you can do to small-sided games, but think about things like 4v4, 5v5, 6v6, 7v7. These are all different types of small-sided games. And in terms of modifications that you can make to small-sided games, you can modify, of course, the number of players. As I was just saying, you can modify the types of goals. So for example, you could play with large goals and goalkeepers. You could play with a line that players have to dribble through, or cone gates that players need to dribble through, or you could do mini goals without a goalkeeper. You could do medium-sized goals. There's so many different objectives in terms of trying to score, and those are all things that you can adjust. Also, in terms of the space, you can do larger grids, you can do smaller grids, you can adjust the shape of the grid. So maybe you have something more narrow and long, or you have something wider. There's all different sorts of variations. But what I want to talk about in this video are 3 ways that you can alter the number of players when it comes to neutral all-time offense players or joker players. So to start things off, let's take a look at this small-sided game right here. This is a typical 7 versus 7. No all-time offense or neutral players involved here. This is just straight up, both teams have the same number of players and they're going at it. And you can see here, this is a much younger team, and actually at this age, 7 versus 7 is very, very typical in the smaller age groups because they're not playing on full, large 11 versus 11 fields. And also keep in mind that the less players you have in a small-sided game, the more touches they're gonna get on the ball. So as a player, I always love playing 4 versus 4 or 5 versus 5, oftentimes even more than 11 versus 11, because I felt like I was seeing the ball a lot more and I was able to develop much more quickly. Now let's move this on to another variation of a small-sided game where you have a neutral player in the middle. Here you can see we've got a 4 versus 4 drill, and there's one all-time offense player in the middle of the field. So whichever team has the ball actually has a 5 versus 4 numerical advantage, which is going to help them keep possession of the ball, help them build more attacks in an effective way. You can also see that the goal in this situation is a little bit different than the previous example. There's no goalkeepers here. Obviously, we've got a little bit older players that we're working with on small goals. You don't have to have one small goal in the middle as well. You could have 2 small goals on either side. You could have 3 small goals. Of course, there's so many different variations you can play, but having that one player in the middle is gonna make things easier for the offensive team. Also notice in this variation, there is a 2-touch restriction on players. So this is another thing that you can do as a coach, is limit the number of touches. Let's say you wanna work with your team on how to move the ball more effectively, and you don't want players to put their head down and be dribbling. You want them to have their heads up, know where they're gonna pass the ball before it comes to them. That's where a 2-touch restriction, for example, could come in handy, because players need to be aware and thinking one step ahead because they only have those 2 touches to work with. Obviously, a 2-touch restriction is gonna make the drill more difficult. That's why it's kind of nice in some cases to incorporate a neutral player in the middle, so that there's always a free player for the offensive team. And that's just gonna make it a little bit more feasible to actually connect and build up some offensive play when you have this restriction in place. Another engaging way that you can add neutral players into your small-sided games is to have them act as players outside the drill. So in the previous example, we had the neutral all-time offensive player in the middle. Here you can see we've got 2 wing players where whichever team passes the ball, they're tasked with passing back to that offensive team that gave it to them. So basically, whichever team is in possession of the ball in this drill, they've got 2 additional wingers that are helping them out. So they have that numerical advantage, but it's a little bit different because those players cannot come into the field and are not directly participating in the pitch. So they're more of just helper players on the side, but it still helps that offensive team have a numerical advantage, keep possession of the ball. And this is just another way to build up your small-sided games. Also notice in this example, we've got two different goals on either side of the pitch. Every example I've showed you of the small-sided games in this video has different goals. Just to kind of keep your inspiration going here, we've got one large goal with a keeper, and we've got two sort of smaller goals connected on the other side, so that there's a lot of different variations in how teams can score. Feel free to build up your own combinations as you're designing your small-sided games. I hope this gave you guys some insights as coaches of different tweaks and adjustments you can make to your small-sided games to adapt them perfectly to your training sessions. If you want some more great small-sided game ideas, check out this video right here. And if you want to learn more about the 360 Player all-in-one sports platform, check out the first link in the description, and we will see you in another video.